All right, let's get straight to the point. Numbers on wooden planes typically mean one of four things. Number one, they're a catalog number. Number two, it's the size that the plane cuts. Number three, it's the dimension of that cut. Or number four, it's an internal reference number that the company used. But with that said, even though they were fairly common, there was never any kind of standardized numbering system that all plane makers adhered to. There are some general rules that were followed. I'm going to start with the most common and then get into specialty planes. So, feel free to bounce out when I get to the planes you're not interested in. Okay, number one, catalog reference numbers. Major plane makers of the 19th century had catalogs or price lists. A couple examples here: Herman Chapin, Greenfield, Sandusky, Ohio Tool Company. For these makers, each type of plane, not every plane, but every type of plane had its own unique number in the catalog. Bench planes, jacks, joiners, smoothers, it was stamped on the toe of the plane, the front. So for Sandusky, their 1869 to the 1920s, let's look at their 1877 catalog. And as I flip through, you can get a sense of how many planes there were and the scope of what their numbering system was. We can see that 19 was a 4-plane, which is a small joiner. And here we have a Sandusky 4-plane, and sure enough, it's a 19. Just real quick, if you have a plane and you don't know what the number means, leave me a comment below and I'll try and help you figure it out. So Union Factory assigned number 112 to their basic smooth planes. Here's another Union Factory, a Rabbet, double knickers, unboxed. It's number 157. So remember that every type of plane got a number. So here's another Union Factory Rabbet. And even though it's a different size, it's the same type with the two knickers, unboxed. So it's also a 157. It wasn't just the big makers that used catalog numbers. There's plenty of small makers that used them as well. Here's one example, Tabor Plane Company out of New Bedford, Massachusetts, 1866 to 1872. And that was either for a price list or it might have been for like an inventory number as well. So you can use these catalog numbers to sometimes narrow down the age of a plane. Hardware store owners like A.C. Bartlett's in Chicago, they would buy unmarked planes from plane makers, and then they put their own mark on them, the store mark. But those planes sometimes had the plane maker's catalog number still stamped on it as well. So we know Bartlett's got their planes from Sandusky because that's a Sandusky catalog number. Here's a screw arm plow plane with ivory tips, marked by Tyler Davidson Company. It's a Chicago hardware dealer, but it's also got that 105 on there, and that's an Ohio Tool catalog number, and that plane matches the corresponding plane in their catalog. So Ohio Tool was around from 1851 to 1920, but the hardware store was only active until 1865. So we know this plane was made between 1851 and 1865. We can really kind of narrow it down. Here's another example. Greenfield Tool Company. They are 1851 to 1883. Over time, they changed some of their catalog numbers, which can be really useful. The number 548 on this boxwood plow plane doesn't match what that number is in their 1872 catalog. It says that 548's an ivory plow, which I wish this was. But this does match their 1854 catalog, so I know it was made in between 1851 and 1872. One other thing to quickly note, as companies added plane types to their catalog over the decades, instead of changing their entire numbering system, they would sometimes just add a fraction to a number. You can see how Ohio Tools did it here. So you may see fractions with catalog numbers sometimes. Okay, moving on to the second type of numbering, and that is sizing. This is often, some of the times easiest to decipher. It's probably the most common number you'll find on planes. They're usually on the heel, the back, They indicate the size of the cut, not the size of the plane. So for this unmarked smooth plane, so it's pretty clear, 1 3/4 inches. Let's look at this Union Factory Rabbet plane again. And you can, along with that catalog number, spot the size number. It's 1.5 inches. And since it's a Rabbet, the iron, which is going to be 1.5 inches, is slightly larger than the body. It's about 1/16 of an inch larger than the body. This is a JF and GM Lindsay dado plane. Cuts a little 1/4 inch dado. So we have 1/4 inch marked on the back. Although that 0, I'm not sure what that number refers to. One more example. This is an Owasco nosing plane. That was a brand that Auburn Tools and then Ohio Tools used. And it's for 1 1/4 inch stair treads. And there's a mistake on the size stamp. It says 1/4 inch instead of 1 1/4 inch. Matching tongue and groove planes are interesting. Sometimes they'll have 3 separate numbers on them. So the number that's a fraction indicates the size of the board to be planed. So Auburn Tool Company, they use 74 as the catalog number on this plane, and it's for 3/4 inch stock. The iron is slightly wider than that. You can see from the measurement here that it's for 3/4 inch. Here's an A. Howland and Company 3/4 inch groove plane, and you can see that along with the catalog number and size number, there's a tiny number 8 there. It's a little hard to spot, but I think you can see it. When I said that some numbers refer to internal numbering systems, this is what I was talking about. So match planes were sold as a set, a tongue and a groove, and makers needed a way to keep paired planes together during production and sales. And so that's what this 8 is there was a sister plane that had an 8 on it as well. Match planes were probably made in small batches. Typically the batch numbers are under 10. This is a number, it just coincidentally is number 8. So we know plane makers reuse these pairing numbers over and over. So just because you find another 2 or a 4 or 8 or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean it was the original match to your plane. Okay, now let's do planes where the number refers to the dimension of the cut the plane makes. The sizing on molding planes is actually pretty simple. The number usually refers either to the size of the iron or the depth of the cut. So for this Auburn plane, it's marked 1/4 inch. That's how deep, that's the depth of the cut. Molding planes, they're used at an angle. So knowing that depth allows you to choose the right thickness of stock. This is a British hardware tool dealer. It's marked again with the depth. And then there's also a number 2 on there. I don't know exactly what the 2 is for. And oftentimes both the width and the depth are marked, like they are on this plane. Okay, hollows and rounds. I am not going to get really deep into this, but let's pause the video for just really, really quick for a second, because I can't explain the numbers without explaining the planes. So they cut either a concave or convex shape, hollow, round, right? And you can combine those shapes to make different molding profiles. So each plane cuts the equivalent of 1/6 of a circle. And the planes are numbered from 1 to typically like 18. And the number refers to the size of that circle in increments of either 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch. It's easier to understand if you just look at the plane. Here are 2 number 4s by different makers. You can see they cut a pretty small profile. But here's the deal. For various reasons, and we can get into all this in a future video about rounds and hollows, the numbering between different plane makers doesn't always match up. Here's a Chapin number 4. You just look at the difference. I mean, it's very easy to see. And this makes finding matching hollows and rounds a real pain for modern users. Okay, let's briefly hit a few more and then we'll be done. Numbers on bead planes refers to the width of the bead. Numbers stamped inside the throat of molding planes. They were used to help keep a plane and its iron together during production. Pencil numbers on the toe of a plane. Sometimes that's the retailer's price. So this plow would have been $12, which is a ton of money in the 1850s. Very rarely you will find the year stamped on a plane. And then there are the numbers that we just don't know what they mean. Remember that there was no universally agreed on numbering system. I've already mentioned a couple examples on the planes that we were looking at. I have no idea what the 31 on this screw arm tongue plane means. It's an adjustable plane, so it didn't have a specific sister plane. So it was obviously some number that was important while it was being made, but we don't know what it refers to. Plane makers started using numbers on planes in the mid 1700s on their hollows and rounds. Became a little bit more common by the end of that century. Here's a British plane maker, John Sim. He was in London 1753 to 1803. The rounded chamfers means this was definitely made at the very end of his career. I don't know what the 5 represents. Doesn't refer to an address or to a dimension of something on the plane. It could have even been added by a user at some later date. Like I said at the beginning, leave me a comment if you have a number on your plane and you don't know what it means. I'll look it up or try and help you decipher it. Thanks for watching and goodbye.